Okay, Pina. Pina, you can go.
We start, Luca?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hello and welcome to all to this webinar on young people and solidarity during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is hosted by APA Division 52 International Psychology. This webinar is part of an ongoing series to celebrate activities of psychologists around the world, to provide useful information for international engagement, and to encourage us to take a broad and global perspective. My name is Pina Marsico, and I, along with Luca Tateo, are your co-hosts for today's webinar. And we want to thank the other members of the webinar committee, Dr. Falu Rami, Dr. Karen Brown, Dr. Mary Bullock, and Daniel Balva. Before we begin, our online audience have the ability to ask questions by typing them in the chat box located at the bottom left of your screen. And please feel free to type your question during the presentation. Luca will be making note of them, and during the last 10-12 minutes or so, he will present them to Wenty Minza for discussion. At this time, I will introduce and welcome our guest speaker. Dr. Wenty Marina Minza teaches at Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and she's a researcher at Center for Indigenous and Cultural Psychology, and currently head of international undergraduate program at same faculty. She obtained a master from the Institute of Social Studies, Den Haag, and then her PhD from the Amsterdam Institute for Social Science Research, University of Amsterdam, 2014. Her research interests mainly concern issues of youth, gender, culture, identity, and her publication include Youth Movements and the Politics of Recognition and Redistribution, published in 2017, and Ethnicity, a Youth People Work Aspiration in Pontianak, published on 2014. So now I leave the floor to Dr. Minza, please.
Thank you, Pina. It's very good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, can you hear me? Pina?
We not hear you.
Not hearing me. Sorry. My mic is on.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go on.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So first of all, I would like to say thank you to Luca and Pina for inviting me here. It's good to be here, and I'm excited to share some of the results of the research on young people and solidarity. So, oh, and I would also like to thank the people from the Center for Indigenous and Cultural Psychology who have been very supportive in this research. So let me just start. First, I would like to start by looking at how young people and COVID-19 has been portrayed, or how the discourse of young people and the COVID-19 has been portrayed in mass media and the concerns of people. The first is on young people's education. So one of the concerns related to young people's education include online learning and the quality of education. Because of the online learning, there has also been concerns about employment opportunities. Many young people have been laid off from work, for those who have started working, but also there are other concerns in relation to young people who have just graduated or are looking for employment. And before it was quite difficult, but it became even more difficult after the pandemic. Another issue is the issue of mental health and young people, that many young people are experiencing depression and anxiety as a result of experiences during the pandemic. And the last issue that I would like to bring here is about young people's position in society in the context of the pandemic. And this is where I would like to start. So I would like to see how, or share how young people are seen in Indonesia in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it seems a bit in paradox or in contradiction. First is that young people are often seen as a risk to society. And this is portrayed in one of the articles by the Jakarta Post, which was as recent as October last year. So here, the title already says that the COVID-19, most Indonesian youngsters feel invincible. And by seeing young people or positioning young people in this way, young people are seen as potential transmitters of the virus. And so they are in some way a risk to society. The second way of portraying youth is how we often portray youth as heroes or national heroes. And here, young people are portrayed as heroes, as in the frontliners in combating the COVID-19. And in Indonesian, it's garda terdepan. So it's not the medical staff, it's not the health staff, it's the young people. So there is this discourse on young people as the frontliners in combating the virus. And as, or in the position as a hero, they're either positioned as volunteers because, well, young people are cheap labor in a sense, or either they are seen as educators. And the third is they're seen as, or positioned as mediators between the government and the community, because there is an assumption that it is the young people who know what is happening at the grassroots, and that they are perfect mediators in facilitating what is happening at the grassroots to the government. However, I would like to see young people here as active participants in overcoming the pandemic, rather than seeing them as either being a risk to society or heroes. So I feel that this would be a more neutral way of seeing young people, and also recognizing their agency, and especially how they are taking a role in acts of solidarity. So why solidarity? Why young people and why solidarity? Why solidarity is because social solidarity, cooperation, and tolerance has become part of recent discourse. If you're familiar with the Indonesian context, you might know Kompas as one of the influential national newspapers or mass media. And there is a section in Kompas that specifically discusses about social solidarity and how it is applied in various sectors of society. And there has also been a rise in academic interest in the concept of social solidarity after the pandemic. These are two local scholars that have discussed the issue of social solidarity. Another reason why solidarity is important, I feel, that is because almost 80 people of young people in Indonesia view solidarity as important in situations of crisis. And this was based on a survey that Luca is also a part of, Luca and his colleagues, that is a survey on perception and risk of the COVID-19 pandemic that was conducted last year. Okay, so the question that I would like to answer here is that how do young people experience acts of solidarity? So what kinds of solidarity acts are they involved in? What are the dynamics within those acts, and so on? So basically, just to put a bit of structure into that question, I would like to see how young people's acts of solidarity are carried out. What are they? What forms? Understand their motivations to participate in these solidarity acts, and also from a youth lens, the role of generational relations in young people's act of solidarity. So the research was mainly done through interviews. It was a bit difficult to do participatory observation as we would actually like to do. So what we did is that we interviewed, at this point it's still in progress, 15 young people between the ages of 17 to 30. 7 were men and 8 women. And we did that with and we gained access to our samples through snowball sampling. Most of the snowballs were friends of our assistants who were still young. Well, I would like to see myself as still young, but my assistants are, I guess, younger. Some of the interviews were done online, others were done offline. So it was dependent on the situation and whether or not our participants were willing to be interviewed through online, through offline modes, so direct face-to-face interview. 8 individuals were from social organizations that here we characterize as task relational oriented groups. And they are working in areas, for example, of community development and education. So these groups are usually known as Komunitas in Indonesian, and I will use that term throughout the presentation. And why I position them as task relational oriented groups is because they have more structure in comparison to the Kampung that will also be another group or another group that we interviewed. There's a variety or range in the structure of a Komunitas. So there's also like online community that is also called Komunitas, which is relatively or has more flexible structures. But the Komunitas that we interviewed here had more structure. So there is founders, there are co-founders, and there are volunteers. So it's relatively formal and structured. 7 individuals were part of an urban village, or what we call as Kampung, and I define them here as a collective relational group. So they have more or less same goals, and they are very focused on building relations in the Kampung. So, and all of these interviews were done in the special region of Yogyakarta. I will introduce Indonesia and Yogyakarta in a while, especially for those who are not familiar with the Indonesian context. So this is Indonesia. It shares borders with Malaysia, Singapore, Malaysia, and in the east with Papua New Guinea, in the south with Australia. Population is around 270 million. It is predominantly Muslim. Its economy mainly relies on agriculture, processing industry, and services. Indonesia and its development is also unequal. If you're familiar with Java, the island of Java, that is the most developed region in Indonesia, and most of its population also reside in this island. So this is Java here. And our research is done right here in the middle, that is Yogyakarta. So where the research itself was done in the context of a region that is quite developed in the context of Indonesia. Okay, so a special region of Yogyakarta has a population of around 4 million, almost 4 million, and its local economy depends on tourism, small-scale industry, and trade. So these are 3 sectors that were quite hardly hit by the pandemic. Okay, and here I would like to introduce you to the Kampung and the administrative units in the special region of Yogyakarta. There is some variety in specific regions or in various regions, but this is a more general sense of the administrative units in the special region of Yogyakarta. And why this is important, because it is to give you an idea of some of the terms and contexts in which some of the interviews refer to. So you have the province at the highest level, which is the special region of Yogyakarta, and then you have district, sub-district, village, and in some places you have the Dukuh, which is a sub-village, or RW, and Kampung is also sometimes used as a term to refer to a sub-village. And then as the smallest unit in the village is the RT, what we call the RT. And I've put a blue background here because many of the participants referred to being a part or a member of the RT, even though we ask questions that place the participant as a member of the Kampung, but they seem to have, their worldview is a member of the RT. Okay, so now I would like to describe what forms of acts of solidarity that young people participate in. So I'll first start with the Komunitas. So here what they mostly do is they distribute goods, especially what is important is food, but also goods that are related to maintaining the health protocol during the COVID-19 pandemic. That included hand sanitizers, vitamins, face masks, and there are other items as well. But these are the major items that were distributed by the Komunitas. Some of the Komunitas also had educational programs, and this included learning buddies, especially in relation to technology. So in some of the places where the Komunitas or the social organization are carrying out their activity, the place is quite remote, and many of the people are not familiar with technology, and so they had to introduce and help the people with technologies. And I think I remember this had to do with online learning. Another area in which the Komunitas also was quite dominant in terms of educational programs was the socialization of health protocols, and that was especially important during the beginning of the pandemic. Okay, and then the next is the Kampung. So here I would like to introduce what the young people in the Kampung are involved in. The first is distribution of food. So what is important for the Kampung here is provision of food for economically disadvantaged families, especially those who were impacted by the pandemic. Another category of families that or households that were given provision of food are those who are infected by the virus. Another important activity that many of the young people are involved in the Kampung is establishing a food bank. So this mostly had to do with food stuff, something that they can save for the future. Okay, so another important activity in the Kampung or in the sub-village is Kampung safety and health. And this included disinfecting activities. So many of the young people, especially men, are involved in this activity. Burial of infected people who are part of the neighborhood or the Kampung. Setting up isolation areas, and usually this was done by using unused buildings within the Kampung. So they cleaned the building and they did some renovation to the building to have it ready for isolation area, and also security from outsiders. So what was especially obvious during the beginning of the pandemic is that many of the young people, especially young men, would build blocks in their alley or in their road so that people from outside could not come inside. Okay, so here I would like to introduce some of the dynamics of these solidarity acts in the Komunitas. First, I start with the meaning of solidarity, how the participants or the young people in the Komunitas make sense of what solidarity means. So across the interviews, we noticed that there's a difference between the concept of solidarity ideally and what is actually done in reality. So first, ideally, acts of solidarity, or the meaning of solidarity, is about helping and sharing resources. No matter how low your resources are, there is always something to share. And this helping and sharing is targeted towards a universal group of people. So it's based on humanity. It's not based on in-group or out-group, but everyone deserves help and sharing of resources. However, in reality, priority is based on closeness, and closeness here refers to especially geographical proximity and interpersonal relations. But across interviews, it was mostly geographical proximity. So there's an idea that you should always be helping, or you should prioritize in helping people who are close to you, who are around you physically. So that would be the first priority. And I think this also has to do with the limited resources, or people can have only a particular amount of resources, so they had to prioritize. Helping and sharing resources with the general public in reality came in second. So first they would focus on people who were around them, and then after that they would distribute help or contributions to the general public, people on the street, and other groups of people in the public area. Changes in solidarity acts after the pandemic is also seen in the activities of the Komunitas. First of all, there were more variety in their activities. So for example, some of the Komunitas that initially focused on education started to focus on other activities, especially the distribution of goods. Other Komunitas who only focused on other activities also started to modify their activities to include activities that had to do with the pandemic. There was also a shift in the target of solidarity acts. So, for example, some of the Komunitas that targeted children, only children or school children in the beginning, started to target marginalized groups of people, for example, the elderly. So there was a shift in the target. Also, there was more effort in actually getting other people to help. So before it was just business as usual, and now it's like, okay, let's try to have other people or persuade other people or other groups to start helping as well. There was also more collaboration between various Komunitas or various groups that were similar, and there was also more collaboration with across different groups. So one of the Komunitas started collaborating with university student organizations. Another Komunitas started collaborating with farmers, a group of farmers, to cut the chain of distribution, and that would make the goods cheaper. Okay, now what is the motivation, or what is the basis for participation in acts of solidarity among young people? The first is, what we found is that it is based on individual interest, and that included, for example, personal branding. So for members of the Komunitas, having a personal branding is quite important, because it is a source of trust. So by branding yourself, there's hope that people will trust you, and that they will either become a member of the Komunitas, or that they can contribute or donate in other ways. So That's why personal branding was important. So the branding of a person being social is very important for the members of the Komunitas. Another is the feeling of empowerment and contribution. So by joining these solidarity acts, they feel empowered because they can at least do something for other people, and that also has to do with the idea of contributing. Another basis for joining these solidarity acts is to attain future opportunities. So Komunitas actually provides opportunities for young people to network, and that is important as a basis for future opportunities. Another reason why solidarity acts is important is for members of the Komunitas is for organizational branding. So it goes hand in hand actually with individual branding. If the individual is trusted, hopefully the organization is also trusted, or it can be the other way around, but mostly it starts from the individual and then it extends to the organization. And another basis for participation is the obligation as a member of the Komunitas. So that's the main reason that they are participating in these activities. Okay, another issue that I would like to bring out here is the intergenerational relations in the Komunitas. So in general, when we look at Komunitas, it's as if that the members are homogeneous in the sense that everyone is young and everybody has the same spirit and everything else. But looking deeper into the social organizations, you can see that there is some a difference in power relations, even though they are the organization itself is relatively egalitarian. So you have senior members of the organization, and their job is to place the foundations of the group, the visions, what are the goals and how to do it. They also network for sponsors. So that is the main task of the senior members. The junior members, the senior members are also mostly the founders or co-founders. The junior members are usually what they call the volunteers or common members, volunteers. So their task is to think about the regeneration of the organization, recruiting new members. That would be one of the important tasks. They also collect donations or do some fundraising. So they look for sponsors. So even if the networking is from the senior members, they are the ones in the field looking, talking to the sponsors and persuading them to donate. Some of them also give music performances, and from the music or the funds raised from music, they will distribute it to the groups in need. Distributing aid, that would be another important task of the junior members. They are also field educators. For example, one of the Komunitas members of the Komunitas promotes savings for children, so how children can save. And they are also communications officers in the field. So basically, junior members are field workers and the senior members are mostly behind the activities. So again, I would like to emphasize that the intergenerational relations in Komunitas groups are relatively egalitarian, and there's a variety of the power relations within different Komunitas. But in general, there is a space for voicing concerns by the junior members, but still the final decision is in the hands of seniors. Membership to the Komunitas is also multiple. So one person can be a member of different groups of Komunitas, and this flexibility of membership actually offers more opportunities for young people to choose a variety of solidarity platforms. So it becomes there's more opportunity because of this flexibility. Okay, so the acts of solidarity in the Kampung. So how do young people make meaning of solidarity in the Kampung is a bit different from the young people in the Komunitas. Here, the construction of solidarity is mainly about giving mutual help. So help is not just one direction, but there is expectation that other people will also help them if they also perform some kind of helping behavior. And this helping behavior is mostly targeted within the in-group. And the in-group here is what is the most important in-group that is mentioned by the young people in the Kampung is the Erte. But in certain cases or in other cases, they will also look at the in-group as village. So one of the cases is this security of the Kampung. So if the person who wants to pass the alley or the road, if they are from the same village or neighboring village, they are allowed to pass. So there's different notions of the in-group in this act of solidarity in the Kampung. For young people in the Kampung as individuals, showing a sense of solidarity is done by helping members of the outgroup. So as an individual, if they want to donate or contribute, they will do that by, for example, contacting another organization and donating to that organization so that that organization can help others. So that's just one of the ways that as individuals, the young people help out in the Kampung. Another way that wasn't present in the interviews, but I can also read in the newspapers or is quite popular in the mass media is this idea of providing food stuff and putting it in the fence of the house, and anybody can have access to that to the aid. Another idea of solidarity that was apparent in the Kampung or in the minds of the young people in the Kampung is being considerate of others. And this included being considerate in terms of using face masks. So on the right hand is a picture of one of the banners by a youth organization in the Kampung. And basically it says that my face mask will protect you, your face mask will protect me. So the face mask will protect all of us. So being considerate of others is important, especially in relation to implementing the health protocols. And another way of being considerate that was mentioned by the young people in the Kampung is of intergenerational relations. So in carrying out acts of solidarity, it is always important to be polite to the older generation, and that is what we call as unggah unggu. So what I think the closest translation to unggah unggu is actually being polite by knowing your position. And the position is usually in relation to someone who is higher in status, whether that is the older generation or of seniority. But so that would be the main idea of this being considerate in acts of solidarity in the Kampung. Also, what's happening in the Kampung in the acts of solidarity is this intensification of in-group feeling and a sense of belonging as a collective. So young people start being active in youth organizations in the village. And again, I would like to emphasize that this feeling or this strong feeling of the in-group is especially within the smallest unit in the village, which is the Erte, and the Erte is what is prioritized. So on the one hand, it has this intensification of in-group feeling, especially at the level of the Erte, has caused polarization between the Ertes in the Kampung. However, in other or in some kampungs, we also see that there is a collaboration between young people across the Erte But in most of the interviews, what we got from the data is more polarization rather than collaboration. There's also more suspicion towards people from the outgroup, and what they consider as the outgroup is people from outside the village. So, okay, so what is the basis of participation in the kampung? Also, it's a bit different from the participation of young people in the komunitas, of why they engage in these acts of solidarity. For young people in the kampung, it's mostly about obligation or responsibility. So there's a moral burden to the community and or their close neighbors. So in Indonesian, some of the terms that they use is the term gaena. Gaena is I think the closest translation to that would be feeling uncomfortable if they didn't participate in the activities. And this gaena, this feeling of uncomfortable, is related to how young people position themselves, which is as the extension of their families. And what I mean here is that if they do not participate in these acts of solidarity, they will bring shame to their family or to their fathers, to their mothers. So they feel that it is some kind of obligation, not only to the community, but also to their family. Another motivation of joining these solidarity acts in the kampung is to feel good. And one of the terms that is used is plong. Plong in English is, if I can translate it, it means like having a burden and then having that burden lifted. So I think that has to do with this idea of being or participating in the kampung as an obligation. And then if you actually participate, then there is a feeling of relief. Plong is like relief. The intergenerational relations in the kampung, or the solidarity acts in the kampung, tend to be more hierarchical. Initiatives of the activities are often from the older generation rather than initiated by the younger generation. Initiatives from youth organizations in the villages are often supervised by the older generation. So there is some supervision, including in meetings, for example. There will always be someone from the older generation who are supervising them. Also, parents become more active during the pandemic, and as a consequence, they also often encourage their children to become involved. So again, that has to do, I think that is also related to why these young people feel that participating in these activities are more of an obligation to their families or to their parents. Okay, so I will round up the results into the conclusion of this presentation. First, I start with meaning of solidarity. So again, solidarity is defined as helping and sharing. So that is theoretically, in theory, that is included as the basic norms of solidarity. And the additional norms is being considerate of others. The solidarity frame most often used is the normative frame or responsibility, but also the hedonic frame to feel good. And this is especially observed in the kampung. Solidarity also involves closeness and mutuality. So both in the komunitas and in the kampung, young people feel that solidarity involves closeness, but mutuality is observed as an answer that young people give in the kampung or in collective relational oriented groups. Ideals of solidarity may be different from the implementation of it. So universal solidarity as something ideal, but in reality, solidarity is more local. Solidarity as action is mostly seen as group-based, but the feeling of solidarity can emerge at the individual level, and that we can see in the example of individuals in the kampung contributing to the outgroup through organizations. And then the second conclusion that I can offer is that the pandemic has encouraged more inclusive acts of solidarity. So the target has expanded. The target of solidarity has expanded, but it also has produced exclusive and segregated acts on the other. And that was, for example, what we witnessed in the Kampung is they becoming more exclusive, and between the Erte, there has been segregation, and mostly what I forgot to explain was that this was sometimes because of the limited resources in which one Erte had more resources and the other didn't. So there was some kind of jealousy and so on. Conclusion number 3, motivations for participation mainly revolved around responsibility, obligation, especially in the Kampung or in the collective relational oriented groups. Personal and organizational gains, this refers to the personal branding, for example, are necessary aspects for the continuation of solidarity acts in task relational oriented groups, even when it is often excluded as genuine solidarity. So theoretically, genuine solidarity would be an act that was that is or does not involve the I or the ego, but in this case, it is necessary, and it brings question to whether this is solidarity or not. Conclusion number 4 is that it has to do with intergenerational relations. The first is that different types of groups produce different intergenerational relations in the acts of solidarity. So between the Kampung and the Komunitas, we can see that there is some difference in the intergenerational relations. In collective relational oriented groups, hierarchical intergenerational relation, which is mainly age-based, is stronger than in the task relational oriented groups. And I think this has to do also with the Komunitas focusing on the task rather than mainly based on this hierarchy of relations. In task relational oriented groups, which is the Komunitas, intergeneration relations are relatively egalitarian, and hierarchy in task relational oriented groups is based on seniority rather than age per se, which is a bit different from the Komunitas where age is very, in the Kampung where age is very important as the basis for relations or intergenerational relations. So I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I will now give back the time to Luca.
So thank you very much, Wenty, for a very interesting presentation. You were perfectly on time, so we can now open the floor to the discussion. We have already actually a couple of questions for you, so I will read them out loud. So, well, the first question is from Martin Dege. Probably you partially anticipated that, but I will read it integrally. So Martin asks, can you elaborate on your definition of solidarity? So far you have mentioned behavioral aspects of solidarity. What about emotional and cognitive aspects? And he goes on, I'm wondering if solidarity is better captured in terms of habitus or mindset.
Yeah. Okay, Martin, thank you for the questions. Yes, I found your presentation in the webinar last month very interesting because Martin has a more theoretical view of solidarity, and I'm more into the empirical side of solidarity and trying to build and construct how solidarity is at the theoretical level. I think, yes, I've in my presentation, I've mainly focused on the behavioral aspect of solidarity. And I think what is still missing is the effective domain of solidarity. So it's not missing, it's there, but we haven't really elaborated that domain. And the cognitive aspect, I think, was addressed by trying to understand what solidarity meant for the young people that we interviewed, and that was where I presented that it was either helping, sharing resources, and mutual help. And then the second question is about whether I see it as a mindset or as habitus. At the moment, I would tend to see this more as a mindset rather than habitus. So it's more cognitive, and habitus has a more complex definition to it. And I think I haven't really, I don't have the data to actually say that this is habitus. I think that would be my answer to the question. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Wenty. So I take another question from Dr. Astana, asking effect of solidarity on group dynamics or on productivity? Effect of solidarity in emotional regulation? That's literally the question.
Okay, yeah. Can you repeat that, Luca? Effect of solidarity?
Yes, of course. I try to interpret it. Maybe he is asking the effect of solidarity is on group dynamics or on productivity? That's the first question. And the second question is maybe there is an effect of solidarity in emotion regulation?
Okay, I see. Okay, so for the first question, the effect of solidarity that I've presented here, I guess is more on group dynamics. So I wanted to see how solidarity acts are performed, and how it actually not only affected, but I think it's more a two-way street. So it's about the act of solidarity and the group dynamics that is produced within that act of solidarity, and it's two-way. I think a two-way interaction rather than a one-way. And the second question, emotional regulation, as I think I've also addressed this question. I think it's related to Martin's question that we haven't really looked into the emotional or the affect dimension of solidarity acts in. So I think already there are two questions about this dimension, Luca, and so I think this might be something that I should be looking into in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thanks again. So yeah, questions are growing. So Aider is asking, did the participants mention anything about expressing solidarity online? Was this a distinct experience compared to solidarity in the field?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, they did actually. So actually, social media, what they mentioned in terms of the role of social media is actually to do this personal branding and the organizational branding. So that was mostly done on social media. Another way that social media was important in these acts of solidarity is to have more people come on board in these acts of solidarity. So, for example, in the Kampung, many of the young people used WhatsApp to have their neighbors who were also young participate in the acts of solidarity. So yes, it was actually, if that's what you refer to as a solidarity online, that was what we got from the data. If you're referring to another form of online solidarity, I don't think that we've have that from the participants yet. Yeah.
Okay, thanks again. Okay, we have now a question from Quartarini. who is saying, okay, great presentation, of course, and asking, did you find anything in your study different from the mainstream theory? Asking, is there any specific finding in your study which might not be found in other countries?
I think, well, I don't think that there is always something very unique. There will be always some similarity with other places in terms of findings. But I think what is unique, especially in the Javanese context, is this idea of unga ungo, because it's very central to the value of the Javanese that people know where to place themselves or position themselves within the web of relations. But of course, you can also find that that in other cultural groups, it's just how intense or how far or how important that is may differ in different cultural groups. But I find that in another study that unga ungo is very central to the value of the Javanese. I think the first question had to do with theory, was it, Luca?
Yes, is asking, did you find anything in your study different from the mainstream theory? I guess here, as I may interpret, again, the question is if there is some theoretical concept that applies specifically to the context you study.
Well, one of the things that I found quite interesting in the theory is this idea of genuine solidarity, and the idea that if a person is carrying out solidarity act because of personal gains or based on this I ego idea, then that could not, then that is not considered a genuine solidarity. And I feel that that theory is a bit maybe judgmental towards how people behave. So I think that would be an important finding of this study. If young people are participating in, for example, in the Komunitas, because they want personal branding or they want to seek network, I would tend to see that as part of growing up, that it is necessary for them to do that. So it's not a matter of genuine solidarity. It is just solidarity. It's just probably the motivation is different for different people. Yeah, so I think that would be my answer, Luca.
Thanks. So one more question is by Yanis. And actually it's directly related to your previous answer. The question is, will solidarity in the village or the concept of unga ungu continue? Is there any chance this concept will fade away?
Interesting question. One of our participants actually said that even though unga ungo is important, it's the way that the for example, one of the important expressions of unga ungo is in language. And if you're familiar with Javanese language, it's hierarchical, right? There's a low Javanese, and there's this high Javanese, for example. So the use of language towards the elderly has changed. Not elderly, towards the older generation has changed. So it's not that they have to use the high Javanese, but they can now start using Indonesian, which is relatively egalitarian, or they can use in particular instances the lower level of Javanese. So I think that it is changing the idea of unga ungo. It might actually in the future be a bit more egalitarian, but I think it would still take quite some time to actually get to the point where it's really equal up. If possible, if yeah.
Okay, we have one more question from Quartarini, asking, is there anything you would be able to advocate to the policy makers in relation to invite the young people to get engaged in society nationwide, at national level, I guess. Given the fact that Indonesia is hosting more than 1,128 ethnic groups.
100, sorry, 120?
Well, sorry, 1,128.
What of what is that, Luca?
Ethnic groups.
Oh, ethnic groups. Oh, okay, okay. I think that the question is a bit layered. There's a question of ethnicity. There's a question of young people. But I think that one of the ways that is important for young people to be engaged is to be more open to many of the motivations that they might actually have in participating, and as policymakers also recognize that young people also need some sense of security. So if there is this idea that, oh, let's get young people to participate because they are cheap labor or we don't have to pay them, I think that would be one way. But is that the right way? So that then I ask you back that question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, we have almost run out of time. I know that it's very late for you, so thank you again for being here. But I cannot, sorry, help to take the 1 minute to ask my question. I'm really confused. Sure. What I found very interesting is that you had to study many let's say intermediate social bodies or social forms of social and collective grouping. Most of them are not of course usually object of psychology, of international psychology. So my question is actually what we can learn, what reflection do you have about a psychology that is, in my view, is sometimes too much polarized only on individual or collective, forgetting that social reality can be way more complex. So how it becomes more difficult, for instance, what are the challenges of studying such complex realities?
Yes, I agree with that statement, that last statement of well, it is very challenging to actually to see whether, for example, when I analyze groups in the Kampung, or if I analyze groups in the Komunitas, which groups am I referring to? In the Kampung, you have families that in psychology is also referred to groups. But is that the unit that I'm looking at? No, I was actually looking at the ERTE, for example. So these would be, I think, challenging questions when I talk about intermediate groups. Which group is actually relevant for young people in these acts of solidarity? So yeah, I actually chose ERTE, but I think when I see the answers again, maybe families are also intermediate groups that are important to see in these acts of solidarity.
Great. So we are almost at the end. Let me thank you very much on behalf of Division 52, on behalf of the webinar committee, and special warm hug from Pina and me, and just of course thanks to you all for participating. We're very numerous. Actually, you outnumber all our best expectations. We're really happy that you were so interested in Wenty webinar. And of course, we would love to hear from you in the audience about this webinar. So please provide feedback on your experience about both the content and the format of today's discussion. So I just have to, on behalf of the Division 52 Webinar Committee, wish you enjoy the rest of your day and the upcoming weekend, and please stay safe. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.